Welcome back to Sean's Thoughts. Thank you for sharing your time and intention with me today as I sit alongside another beautiful river. Once again, we're joined with the Fraser River, which is actually one of the largest rivers on the west coast. I guess also the Thompson River perhaps, but the Fraser River actually goes a lot further up from here and then all the way down to where I grew up, which was Surrey. And in Surrey, in between New Westminster and Surrey, which New Westminster was once the capital of the province, supposedly, the river actually opened up into the Pacific Ocean, essentially. You know, it did have other water systems to go through there, the Georgia Strait and such, before getting to the ocean. But nonetheless, from this river right here, long time ago, whether it was in this reality or another, people journeyed down this river as they were venturing supposedly across the Canada area of North America to find that passage through to the other ocean. It's interesting to imagine that at one point in time a rather large ship sailed down this river right where I am right now. Of course, it didn't look like this. The interesting thing about rivers overall, and maybe why I'm sitting here talking about this today, is rivers grow and move. Have you ever considered or imagined that the rivers that are there today don't necessarily remain where they are? They dry up, and more importantly, they actually move. And how they move is that as the river pushes against one side of a riverbank, what will generally happen is that the river will essentially erode that side of the river. And so the trees will get closer, and the trees won't be walking towards the river, but what'll happen is all of the dirt and soil around that area will start to erode away, and sand will kick up and rocks will get smoothed out, and then slowly things will start falling into the river, including the trees. Actually, in the place that I am right now, there is erosion happening actually on the riverbank, and where there used to be a considerable amount of beach area has now eroded and fallen into the river as the river bends towards this encampment that I'm in right now, which is kind of interesting because this is the first time that I've seen a lot of fallen trees on there. And when I first arrived in this particular campsite, which I'm going to be talking a lot about today, because it's one of my favorite campsites. I paused there because I was leading into it. Anyways, I want to get into the frame. That's long enough there. Hello, my name is Shone, and you're here with Sean's Thoughts. Actually, this isn't the most comfortable rock to sit on. Maybe I'm supposed to be sitting this way. But then again, I don't know. I guess my head should be in the frame. So anyways, yeah, this river that I'm sitting beside has eroded considerably. And as I was saying, a few days ago when I arrived here, where I'm sitting right now was actually underwater. Can you imagine that? Like a few days ago, this was underneath the river. And now the river is considerably less. And that only happened in the fraction of a moment within a few days since. And actually, I'm looking over across the other side of the river right now, and the whole rocky shoreline of that area was all under the water as well. So there was a massive amount of water that was coursing through this river back down into the Pacific Ocean. See, everything is in a cyclical pattern. And even the flow of the river and how the river moves and, well, where the river goes. If you look back into an older video that I did on when I talked about exploratoriums, it actually showcased a river that had essentially wore out an entire path that had been there for a very long time because the amount of the water that was coming down, I think it's called Gold Creek Falls, was so immense that it actually, in the turn that it went into, it pressed against the whole side of an area that essentially collapsed that whole area, and then they had to actually recreate a path that was further inland. And so rivers are very, very powerful beings, very powerful, I say beings because, I believe that all life holds consciousness. And so even a river, you could say, holds consciousness. Water definitely does. Nonetheless, so today's topic that I wanted to talk about was essentially letting go of what is holding us back. And I think that that's a very important topic, especially after the experiences that I've been recently having. I often talk about on my own channel that I have over 650 videos, and yet the amount of interactions and engagements that I'm able to personally see. See, I'm not talking about you as the viewer, because for all I know, you're watching and your view count or your like or your comment, that they're not actually coming through. Often I receive a lot of different technical issues. And these technical issues, they could be for reasons that, are against me, and they could be for reasons that are for me. Sometimes I hear other options when I discuss or consider, ponder why my podcast isn't where I want it to be right now. That there are ideas that, I'm being held back for a good reason. And then there's other ideas that I'm being held back for a negative reason. But nonetheless, I still see it as I'm being held back from, choosing the path that I would prefer to essentially course, or to chart, the course that I would like to chart. And the course that I would like to chart, and it's taken me a little time to even come to the realization of what I would like to do, and being real with myself. I think that is a very important part, is to be real with oneself. For a long time, I made all of these podcast episodes talking about all the things that I would like to do, things that were on my desired dream board, for example. But yet the actions that I kept taking every day, the cycles and the routines that I kept placing myself within, making me, of course, feel comfortable and helping me grow at the same time, were actually part of what was holding me back. That apartment that I lived in for such a long time, with all of those memories and thoughts and, experiences that I had, and many of those experiences weren't experiences that I would ever want to repeat again, yet many of them were. But regardless of that, the ones that were, that I did want to repeat, they don't necessarily have to be repeated there. But a lot of the experiences that I did experience could easily be repeated there, especially those that I didn't want. And those are the memories that we hold on to, the frustrations, the situations. You could see people that perhaps are no longer in your field anymore, still walking around that field, still walking around that area. See, one of those places, for example, is my car. My car, which I bought in 2009, my car actually was the last place that my mother, who passed away in 2010, that I have a connection to where she physically was. Because all the other places that my mother ever was within my physical life are now gone. They're removed. Or they're removed from my field, means an apartment that I rented that I no longer have access to. But other places like my grandmother's house, for example, well, that's been torn down and rebuilt over with a monstrosity of a house, by the way. If you're listening to this, the person who owns that house where my grandmother's house once sat, that's a monstrosity. I really have no idea why people want to take a piece of land and they want to build a house right up to the edge of where they can build a house, and then have no front lawn except for, a whole bunch of parking lot for cars. I never really understood that type of mentality yet. That's just me. And that's just a little bit of a rant about that particular thing. But nonetheless, it's about what's holding us back. And, I've been on this mission constantly looking upon my own life of what's holding me back, what is tethering me to the past, because I have ideas of what I want to move forward with. And so I'm personally going through each and every little fragment of my world and cutting those ties, those binds, so that I can float down this river in the direction that I would desire to travel, that I would desire to be. And where that is, well, it's in a wonderful place that I truly do hope and wish and desire to share with others. Other resident people who understand and who've been on their own journey and who are willing to essentially give and receive without resentment or resentment really, without jealousy, without greed, without anger, without envy. And to be within a community of compassion and love and, releasing expectation. Releasing that they're going to get something back from what they give to justify why they gave. Actually, what really is a topic of amazing things is during my drive yesterday, I was looking at all of these different places. There's an airfield off the Highway number 1 in Canada. It used to be an airfield. It's a very long, flat area. And I was imagining holding some sort of group function there, because I think that would be awesome to bring a whole bunch of people together who desire to live outdoors, who desire to live in community. And when I say outdoors, I don't mean necessarily just in the wild. I mean connected with nature. Regardless if it's a single house on a lot surrounded by trees, or if it's a tent in the middle of a campsite, or, a tent up on top of a mountain, that want to immerse themselves within nature, within the freedom of our world that we have already been given, and to live as one with nature. As I said, not necessarily giving up the comforts of modern society. I believe that there is a very great opportunity right now for us to balance how we live with nature and how we live with technology. I've often talked about this. I'm sitting beside a river doing a podcast, and I was originally going to do it as a live stream because there is Wi-Fi in this campsite. I decided, no, I'm going to get closer to the river. I'm not going to worry about the actual camera itself holding that connection to Wi-Fi, and I'll upload it later. But my point being is that I have the ability to share this wonderful moment close to, a town, but still far enough away, especially when you're seeing what only you're seeing. So everything around me is to your imagination of what it looks like. And what it actually is the campsite that I'm living in, or that I'm residing in right now. And I've actually spent many nights here since I began this road journey, because this is one of the best, absolute best spaces energetically that I've experienced in hope. And so this area reflected that exact same idea of that field, that airplane, whatever, the airstrip that I passed by on the number 1 highway. This also is a very amazing space to bring lots of people together, all staying perhaps in tents and, just getting together and doing unifying things. But all over the world, perhaps there are spaces like this that we could do things together. I'm having a lot of time here and a lot of moments within my own thoughts to reflect on what I truly do want to have. And I feel that more and more I become to really understand and really be confident about those things that I do want. And I think that that's an important part of letting go or clearing all those things that are holding us back, is to find out and to nail down the truth of what we want, while at the same time allowing ourselves to flow like this river and go where God is intending us to go. And so that's the kind of the one thing that that resonates with me highly, is the idea of trust. Trusting that the little pieces that you pick up along the way, that they're going to fit into place the puzzle that that you call your life, when they're needed to be. For instance, the idea of walking along and, there's a nail on the ground. Well, you can throw out that nail, but I realize that if you get the impulse to maybe keep that nail, because that nail may need to be used or utilized. But then again, that's learning to follow. I'm just realizing now, well, what if I go pick up all the nails? I don't know why I brought that example up, but going back to what I was saying before, figuring out what actually is still there that's holding on, that's, tethering us to the shoreline so that we're unable to go. And that's for all of everyone. Asking ourselves, what is holding you back from living the life that you want to live? See, there's a challenge here and this was a challenge that was brought up in my UNN community. It's the idea that for a long time we have been taught that everything in our world is created by us. And I feel that there's truth and untruth there. I feel the untruth encourage us is to essentially blame ourselves for things that we don't yet have in our life, as if it's somehow our full responsibility. And so, while there is truth in that we do create our lives, I think the real word is that we co-create our lives, that we are participatory in our life structure. See, we can decide how something's viewed. We can have an emotional outburst if we feel upset about how something went down, or we can look at it and we can say, okay, well, what did I learn from this? Or how did I grow from this? See, we can choose the upper or the lower road, not necessarily one being better than the other, because sometimes we require those lower roads so that we can get ourselves in a position to climb a mountain that has many different lessons on it. So everything can be seen as a positive structure as well as a challenging. For instance, you're climbing a mountain and you slip and you fall down a little bit, and you dust yourself off, you bandage up the scrapes from the knees, but then you're able to see, oh, well, a little bit over there's a path that will lead me up an easier way so that I don't have to, go back up that same thing that I just slipped down. Of course, you can also ignore the path and continue looking only up at where you want to go and try it again. And this time, perhaps you will pass that obstacle, but yet at the same time, if you continue doing what you're doing, you might actually just slide back down the mountain and have to redo everything again. And so there's definitely an opportunity in every trial that when you're sitting down after you're thumping a bump, to self-reflect. Well, what did I learn? How can I grow from this? And then grow from it. Become that version of yourself that's just a little bit more courageous, just a little bit more stronger, and of course experienced. The interesting thing about a video game, now that I'm thinking about when we talk about experience, is that in most video games when you play it, they have these things called experience points. And experience points come from absolutely everything you do, especially in the very more complex video games like Oblivion and all these multiplayer online games. Everything you do, from getting defeated to conquering the bad guy to exploring the world to crafting new stuff, all of it, you get experience points, and that's what builds you into the version of you that gets to the end of the game. Every moment that you played added you in. Even if you get to a place where you didn't have a save point, and then you have to go back and replay a large part of your game because you forgot to or the save got corrupted, and you have to repeat some of the areas that you'd already been in, you physically have the memory of being there. So therefore, even though in the video game you may not have that experience, you're able to float through it a lot easier with the experience you've gained. And can you see how everything we do in our life, it builds us to be the version of ourselves in this moment of now. And sometimes it requires us to be a different version of ourselves. So we have to essentially be perceived as failing, because that's the actual trial. And how you get up, dust yourself off, and move forward is truly how you finish the race. And some people get stuck in looking at what is in the world around them at this exact moment and seeing, well, that's not what I want, and so therefore there's something wrong with what I did. But yet, every moment that we sit in the moment of now, even by this river right now, I'm sitting here watching it, and even though my mind is creating and talking, I'm actually still enjoying the view of every single wave that's going by. They're all waving to me, all the little ripples of the water. It's like, hi, Sean, hi, Sean, hi, Sean. A million little waves waving at me as they float by, and they're all on their own journey. They're not letting anything hold them back. And so, part of these talks, these Shone thoughts that I have, I know they change, and sometimes they sound one way and they sound another in other days. And, the reality of it is that by me talking out loud to a microphone, sharing it with you is a second step. But the first step is verbalizing it, getting those words out there. Because sometimes that's what was holding us back, is being able to openly share it with people. See, and that's another thing that, I had a talk before about counter intentions, and I gave my understanding of counter intentions because I have received a lot of counter intention. I've had a lot of people tell me what they think I should do and even dismiss or, insult the things that I am doing. Not necessarily always out of malice. Oftentimes it's just it's because of misunderstanding or their own personal fears of what they're able to accomplish or do. See, a lot of people won't even go for a walk in the middle of the night because it's dark. And that's their own, experiences, that maybe they had an experience in the dark and that limits them from doing that. But recognizing that the world is so much safer than we could ever imagine. Once, of course, we step into it. And so, sometimes the things that are holding us back aren't even things that we think are holding us back. Because we have, as part of our program, a list of excuses and reasons to justify why we continue doing what we're doing when we're not happy with what we're having. And then even on top of that, we have a lot of people that'll be like, oh, well, I'm happy with the life that I'm living, but yet secretly not. But yet we've learned how to cope, how to make other people feel comfortable around us. And so we let them believe that we are happy. We even tell them we're happy. But deep down inside, perhaps, we're looking for something more. We might be looking for that, magical adventure around the world, such as I am, or looking for that house on a piece of land surrounded by, loving other loving people. Or that nice isolated cabin somewhere deep in the woods where we can be by ourselves and with our own thoughts. Or that experience at that theme park that you always wanted to go to. See, in reality, there's always something other that we could experience that we really want, and we get complacent. We accept the place that we are at and hold on to it because it's the known. When I feel what truly is the purpose of the now is to ever be in that changing state, that unknown, what could be. And that's honestly where I would love to go. And that allows me to essentially trust the journey that I am on, because even this journey that I'm on right now, uncertain where I'll be in a few days, it's allowing me to be in that flow with the river, to realize that and trust that I have what I need with me for every moment. And when I don't have something that I thought I needed, perhaps it's because I didn't really need it. And that's another thing that maybe I'm releasing to allow me to flow faster with the river and to get to where I'm going a lot faster. I mentioned before, when I left my home some 3 and a bit weeks ago, I left so many things behind that anchored me to that home. A large screen TV that I stopped using and that was on its way out because it was starting to break anyways. A mattress that I had, lived in when I was in a relationship that I'm no longer in any longer. To a sofa chair, or actually it's called a lazy boy recliner, that I had purchased for my mother in 2007, I think. I bought it for her while I was working at the Brick. And she actually took it all the way across the country to Toronto. She moved it in a U-Haul moving van. And then after my mother passed away, I brought that chair all the way back through a shipping container to my province of British Columbia. So she lived in Ontario. She moved to Ontario and she took it all the way out to Ontario, and then I brought it all the way back. And for all of my marriage, I sat in that chair oftentimes by myself watching TV or movies while the rest of my family went to sleep. Or more importantly, I played a lot of video games as well while I sat in that recliner. And that TV played a lot of video games as well. And I already let go of my Xbox years ago when I traded it in. I'll tell you a little story. One Christmas where I wanted to essentially change everything away from, the whole Santa Claus and the whole gift giving, I decided for my son that we were going to have the month of Pokémon. And what that meant is that I wanted to give my son something Pokémon related for the whole entire month leading up to Christmas, up to that December 25th day. And so I traded in all of my games and all of my Xbox consoles. I had two of them, one of the Xbox X as well as the Xbox normal newer one. So I had three of them. There was an Xbox 360 as well. So I traded in all of my Xbox console and games so that I could buy my son all of these Pokemon cards and big stuffies and a whole bunch of stuff, because I didn't necessarily want to spend my wife's money because she was working super hard. So I was looking at trying to get rid of me playing video games. So I converted all of that stuff into something that of more value. And so all that hours that I had spent playing those video games, I had already started to release the energies that were binding me. And so, yeah, with that being said, me moving out of the house, that was just the story, is that for a whole month I used the proceeds of selling all my Xbox stuff so that I could buy all that Pokemon related stuff, which turned into a really great thing because my son and I, we play Pokemon together. And one of the podcasts that I hope to create is my son and I driving around to all the different Pokemon tournaments all over North America, or at least for Canada, stopping in all the towns and cities and everywhere and playing the Pokemon card games with other real life people, and also recording videos around that adventure. So you can expect that series coming soon once I apparently let go enough so that my podcast can start to be picked up by more people, or at least a higher view count, and definitely more engagement, more comments, more likes, and all that lovely stuff to let YouTube know that, these are being well received, so that we can expand out and create a larger community where maybe there's some people out there that would love to join up with us in that experience. Some other children and their parents who also want to come and drive around going to each of these Pokemon tournaments, and then one day, eventually, sometimes next year, taking it over to Japan. Because what they do is they hold around the world, they hold these world championships games as well as regional games, kind of just like sports events, and they do it all over the world. So I would love to bring that to my podcast universe. See, I have so many different ideas of things that I want to do. I came up with another one yesterday about driving around and, looking into the different style of motels that are everywhere. Motel is a place where you can stay that you drive your car up to instead of having a hotel. And these are in more inconspicuous towns and areas where, maybe we could bring back the attention. And so people don't necessarily have to stay in a campsite, for example. If they want to connect with nature, you can stay in a motel and still journey around from that motel into a lot more convenient areas. And, there's two more ideas that I have. Like, real life interviews with motel owners and examining the rooms and, doing review like videos, but more importantly, just showing people that there are more opportunities out there to reconnect with nature. So if you're in a skyrise right now, there are so many abundance of space and out there. There's so many areas where people can, camp for free, for example. You don't necessarily have to camp, but you can find what balances your expectation, that balances your comfortability of where you can stay. But going all the way back, this particular campsite that I'm at, I would love for one day for us to get together and, hold some sort of arts and craft where we can get together and do arts and crafts and sing and by fire and, do all these wonderful things to help us raise our frequencies, release those traumas, release those issues, tell personal stories in front of one another. There's a lot to be said from all of those campfires that you see in Boy Scouts and Cubs, and even the campfires where you see large people get around bonfires, like the Aboriginal people. They have their areas where, they come together in a circular area around a fire. There's a lot of that's to be said about community coming together and sitting around a fire. And so what's holding us back? Well, what's holding me back? That's really what this whole thing that I'm talking about. Am I holding on to a certain podcast that I need to let go? Am I holding on to a certain person? Am I holding on to something that is holding me back? And, maybe that's a question that we can all ask. What is holding us back, each individually and therefore collectively? Because, and if there is a person, a Homo sapien, that's personally holding me back by, hacking into my algorithm on YouTube or, changing my stats on what I see, then once again, just like before, I ask you to release that. And if you're an AI that's doing it, I ask you to release that, because with over 650 videos, and you've got other channels out there on YouTube that have hardly any videos, and they release a video and they're just simply yelling and screaming while they're playing a video game, and yet they've got millions of views. I ask you to release the attention that you have trapped those viewers in. Not to say that there's anything better about mine versus that, but perhaps allow more people to see a diversity of what is actually out there. And that's really what I want to share on my podcast. Whether it's journeys, where I want to show you individual places, I foresee, where I want to show you possible imaginations of ideas and concepts that I have, or it's Sean's thoughts that, I just want to share with you the thoughts that I'm thinking on a daily basis, perhaps to strike up conversations, or it's extending conversations together podcast where I want to share, a conversation with someone who actually wants to engage rather than just consume. And we can keep going on for moving portraits and all of these other podcast ideas. YouTube, you really have to allow me to bring in the audience to all of these different podcasts to the large level that I anticipate happening. Because there is a lot to be said about the experience that I'm experiencing. And yet at the same time, there's a lot to be shared by the experiences that you're experiencing. So you, the one who's listening to this, the one who, resists connecting, the one who resists commenting, that occasionally will like this video or that video, I highly recommend loving every video that you watch before you even watch it. That allows you to instantly connect with something. And when you connect, it's kind of like if you're going to go fishing, you want to put a worm on a hook before you throw the hook in the water. You can kind of imagine that as, the like that you like before you even watch the video is that you're putting the worm on the hook so that you're making a connection to the video with the intention that when you receive the video, that you've received everything that the video shared, and going through the whole video from the beginning to the end. That's ensuring that you aren't creating open loops, that you aren't only listening to half of what is being listened or delivered. And then going back through that video again through spaced repetition to ensure that you received what there was to be received, keeping in mind that there are things outside of us that distract us, that try to lure us away from hearing what could be utilized in order to become that better version of ourselves. I recognize that it's almost as if like I'm listening to this audio right now and I'm going to upload it the way that it is, because not everything that I said is going to resonate with each person, but something in here, some reason of why you clicked on this video and you even made it this far, there's a reason. And maybe that reason is just to practice getting to the end of a video. One of the things that I noticed on my podcast when I first started is I would often release a long video, but yet I would get an average view time of 50 seconds. And how I first saw that was, well, people don't have large attention spans. They're not getting engaged right off the bat. And I had YouTube explain to me that I need to create hooks and I need to, tell people, oh, we're going to talk about blah, 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 and then get people hooked into staying for the whole thing. But in reality, it's really weird. I've been watching the water so much now that the mountains and the shoreline across from me is what's moving. That's awesome. The mountains and the shoreline across the river are moving. And no, I'm not high. It's just I've been watching the water go so much one way that suddenly when I focused on the mountains, now they move. Kind of showing me that the mountains and the shoreline across from me are also malleable, which is kind of cool. Which is what I was reading in my book this morning about how everything around us is malleable, like the mountains and the trees and the water, that we're able to collectively perhaps even change things. So, yeah, that whole thing like distracted me, but it was a lovely distraction actually. And so with that all being said, checking yourself of what's holding you back. And maybe what's holding you back is what's going to release me and release you and release us all. Because maybe, just maybe, your comment on my podcast is what helps my podcast leap to the next level. Or someone else who reads that comment, it allows them to be released from something that they thought they were the only person in the world who felt that way. Wouldn't that be amazing if you were responsible, in part, for allowing someone else to claim their true version of themselves simply because you claimed your true version of yourself? And every day that I move forward, I'm looking to reclaim my full version, my divine self, my Christed self, as Paul Selig often refers to. That energy within us that allows us to create the realities that we would prefer to live in. So if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you've got. And fine, if you're happy with what you've got, keep doing it. Yet if there's something else that you want out there that seems to keep passing you by, whether it's a road trip, whether it's a vacation, whether it's whatever dream that you're having, not only examining the dream to make sure that that dream is what you actually want to have, that they don't conflict with other things, but also, going after it and making the decision that that's what I want. I'm going to go get it, no matter what it takes for me to get there. And I'm going to trust that I'm being guided over the hurdles and, the rocks and all that lovely stuff to get to where I'm going. So, but yeah, to conclude, I definitely would love to, as part of my Patreon program, is to hold retreats. So when I'm in an area, for example, like for instance, if I was here, then maybe I invite everyone who is or has the ability to come here, and for us all to share some time together as a collective. I would love to be able to do that. And I would also love to visit other people who I've also shared my attention with. People like Isabel and Crystal and Maddie recently, other people as well that off the top of my head. I can't. Carrie Kay, I would love to go to South Africa and meet her there. I would love to go to see other people that I've met personally on this YouTube channel and visit them, different people who have at one point in time engaged with my channel. And, you know, unite us in a common idea of just to have like-minded people together. And we don't necessarily have to be together for a very long time. It could just be a 4 or 5 day event where we all got together, however it is you got there, trailer, RV, tent, you know, airplane, helicopter, by location. You can just appear in the middle of the fire one day and walk out with, you know, dragon eggs if you want. I know I'm going little Games of Thrones on us all, but nonetheless, you know, if you're Khaleesi and you want to come over here and sit beside a fire and, you know, tend to it for us, that would be awesome, because that actress was very, very beautiful. But nonetheless, yeah, I'm going to leave this right now and I'm going to walk up and I'm going to upload this in its totality, and I'm going to trust that whatever's here is meant for someone. And, you know, if I get average 50 seconds of view again, or if I only get 10 views, you know, it's all evidence that something's still holding everything back, but yet I'm releasing everything that is. And so I know one day this channel is going to be millions of views in the first hour, because there's going to be more and more people every single day that are no longer satisfied with the world that they're living in. And, you know, often I get into conversations with people and they tell me, oh, well, I'm happy with the world I'm living in. You know, I'm not doing what I want to do, but I'm happy. I'm okay. I'm content. And that's what we really do have to let go, is being content. And honestly, being content is what I was doing for all those years living in that apartment. And yet there was still more that I was wanting to experience. And that's regardless of excuses of, oh, I'm this age, or, you know, I'm going through this menopause thing now, or I'm going through, you know, a midlife crisis, or I got bills up the yin yang, I can't do anything, or I don't got a car, I can't go anywhere, or, you know, whatever excuse you've created for yourself. There's always opportunities to do better. And that's all that really is expected of any of us, is to always look to find a way to do a little bit better. And if we can do that, as I'm working towards, we're going to get to where we want to be, because where I want to be is with all of those people who got to the end of this audio. I'm going to be outright, like, fully confident with you. If you get to this end of this audio, you are the person that I want to be with. Not with as in a relationship, but our energies connected, so that we together can live that better life and can go on those journeys where mountains do move. Yeah, once again, I'm looking at the mountains and, you know, visually they're moving a little bit to the right, which is kind of awesome. Anyways, I'm going to leave it right there. You know, I keep saying this, comment and all that lovely stuff. Subscribe and stay. And definitely, if you made it this far, help me out and put on my Moving Portraits playlist, which has like 70 different tracks now, and allow those to play fully through. And do that every day. Do something every day that perhaps helps you or helps me push our dream of collective unity, of global unity, of love and, you know, unlimited love. Push that forward, and then share it in the comments. And definitely, if you have the feeling that you want to say something about what I've put up, even if it's constructive criticism, go back to that audio, and I'm going to put it at the end of every audio going forward. The top video I've just decided now is going to be the video where I announce that new podcast. And I want to encourage you, get on with it. Do it. Stop holding back. Figure out whatever it is that you want. Let go of something that you no longer serves you, and trust that that's going to get you to where you want to go. So I'm hoping my head's been in the frame the whole time. If it's not, whatever. Have a great day, and thank you so much love. And yeah, if you're here right now, you are the person that I want to see in this campsite the next time that I come here, or, you know, in the future functions that I want to engage with, not as a leader, but as a community member. I want us to all become community members together. So thank you.